Hello, welcome to Working Dragon Mystic, where we discuss real, metaphysical, and occult knowledge so that you can manifest real and tangible results in your life. This week, we're going to cover a touchy topic on evocation versus invocation. What are they? What do they mean? And why do so many people argue over these? So stay tuned. Alright everyone, today I'm wanting to do a video on a topic. I debated whether I was going to do this for a long time. There's times I wanted to, and then there's times I thought better of it. However, over the last few months, I can't think of a day where I haven't got this question in email one way or the other. And a lot of questions, and a lot of people even saying people are coming at them with some anger over this topic. So I decided I am going to do this video. And we're going to approach it in a certain way. Now, when we talk about evocation versus invocation, there are a lot of opinions on these two words. Now, you'll notice I said they were opinions, because if you actually go to the dictionary definition, these two words in the dictionary are often used similarly, in fact, almost interchangeably. So let's talk about that first. Because one of the things that we are looking at as magicians and practitioners is terminology. And where there are so many different traditions, some traditions utilize terminology differently. And now due to the internet, if you don't know the author's tradition or whatnot, you may not understand how they're using the term. And that's caused a lot of confusion in terminology. And that terminology has been twisted and has changed drastically. And this is one of the issues we do run into, because oftentimes the dictionary doesn't necessarily cover magical practice. It just covers the definition of the word. So if we look at just the Webster's dictionary definition, let's start with evocation. An act of evoking, summoning, such as summoning of a spirit. Even imaginative recreation. You evoke the memory of your childhood. The act of bringing or recalling or feeling a memory or image to the conscious mind. A vivid evocation of stillness in the title poem. It's about bringing something forward. It's about summoning. It's calling it forward. That's all it is. So if I was to call my buddy Al and say, "Hey Al, I need to talk to you. Would you mind coming over?" I'm basically evoking Al. Or if I invite him to dinner, I'm evoking him. If I'm invited to church, you're evoking me. No matter what, that's essentially what's happening here. It can also be used as an action of eliciting a response. So you actually do something to get someone to respond in some way. Now, how we hold ourselves, our body language, these kinds of things will actually elicit a response from a person based on how we want to do it, well, if we're doing that intentionally. So we can actually hold ourselves in an intimidating way. We can hold ourselves in a more casual, comfortable way. All these things evoke or elicit a response. So remember that. Then you come down to the definition of invocation. And I promise that we got a reason for this. The process of petitioning for help or support. Often referring to prayers or requests. A calling upon for authority or justice. A formula of conjuring, incantation, or summoning. An act of legal or moral implementation or enforcement. And evoking, it actually goes in to talk about how invoking is used as a noun for calling upon a deity, spirit, etc. So there we are. We're doing that calling again. We're calling on something. We're summoning it. A petition or supplication for aid. Prayer. They keep saying calling upon. They just reword it 5 times. Okay. So here we have two words where we are calling to a being, an entity, a spirit, a person, whatever, and we're asking their aid, we're calling them to us in some way. Now, those definitions are going to be important as we go forward here, okay? That's going to be our baseline of knowledge. So, here's the thing. For years, magicians, often credited to ceremonial magicians, though there are a few grimoires that aren't really ceremonial based that have used this terminology similarly. But definitely you see it a lot more in ceremonial magic, where the word evocation is used to mean contact and communication with a summoned spirit externally of you, because external. So that means you're in the room, it's in the room, you're both in the room, you're both having a conversation. You're having that communication. Or in the case of astral evocation, where you're using a mirror to view into the astral, they're still external from you. So it's an external communication. Much like you sitting in a room talking to your friend or making a phone call to your friend. It's external of you. Whereas invocation, they used as you are invoking the spirit to reside part of its energy inside of you. And the communication, therefore, is happening internally. Okay? Now, this is a very specific distinction in magical practice, because evocation, you're separated from the energy. Invocation, you're pulling the energy into you when you have that conversation. Now, anytime you pull an entity's energy into you, it's going to have some effect on your energy. It's got to move it around, whatnot. And it will leave a fingerprint of sorts temporarily, and if you do it enough or strong enough, it could even become a permanent shift and change. This is perfectly understandable, and this is why the two words were separated and used magically in these two ways for such a time. Now, let's be honest, invocation is mild possession. But let's be honest, if you just use the word possession, people just lose their freaking minds. And possession is not like people think it is in Hollywood. Unfortunately, no, it does not happen that way. But invocation is allowing an entity into you, and you do have that internal communication. Your energy attunes with it. It can be a very empowering experience. Now, different magicians handle these approaches differently. Me personally, I don't invoke anything unless I know it, I trust it, and it's an ally of mine, and I've reached that point of comfort. I consider that more intimate communication. I just don't do it. So I do evocation to build up the friendship initially, and I invoke only occasionally. However, there are magicians out there who prefer invocation totally. They dive all in with these entities and work with, and they're actually wanting to leverage those energetic shifts of the invocation. Because the energetic shift, when you know it's there, you can leverage it to help you in your path and your workings and all that. So you can actually plan for it, and they do leverage it. That's okay. I know a lot of magicians who do that and get great results with it. It's not my particular fancy. It's not what I like to do, but that's okay. There's nothing wrong with how they're doing it. That works just fine. And then there are people who evoke only. And that's okay as well. So the magicians separated these two as a terminology for essentially describing where you're communicating with the spirit. They separated the two. Since you do have two words that essentially both mean you're summoning and communicating with the spirit in some way, they gave them a further distinction within the magical practice. Okay? Now that brings us, and you're probably wondering, Drake, this makes perfect sense then. Why is so many people arguing about it? Where's the problem? The problem actually comes with a bit more of a modern definition of these two words. And I should say modernly published, because I'm not sure it's overly modern. Published modernly and coming into use more modernly, yes. But let's talk about it. Demonolatry. Now, first off, before I go into this, I want to say I got no problem with the practice of demonolatry and the fact that it is a spirituality and a religion. Let me make that clear. I have no issues with that at all. Okay? I know many a demonolator practitioner who I have sat down, I've had a wonderful conversation with, and we've talked about this right here, And other than a terminology mix-up, we've had no disagreements. And once both sides have made our case, neither one of us have disagreed. We found out we were on the same page. So here we go. In demonology, you will often find evocation defined as evocation suggests conjuring an entity against its will, and invocation is more personal and more prayer-like. Nowhere's in the definitions is against its will insinuated, and nowhere's in ceremonial magic do I see a statement requiring the summoning of an entity against its will. It's just not there. Now, that said, I do see it in Solomonic practices. You look at those rites and rituals, they're mostly threats. And I would agree, I wouldn't use those. I would not use those. Whether I was evoking or invoking, I would not use those. So, this is where the sudden the shift in the paradigm's coming from that I can find, because this is the source for these definitions that I can find. If anyone's a demonology practitioner and you know a different source of these definitions outside demonology, please let me know. I'd love to dive further into this research. I'm always seeking to learn. Now, this is why I said there was a terminology difference. If your only definition, your only separator between evocation and invocation is one is against the will and one is more respectful, well, okay, see, you've created a separator, just like the ceremonial magicians did, because you're using two words that essentially mean the same thing. Great, I get that, no problem. And I would even agree you should always contact an entity with respect. Same ground. Now, I do not think that just because someone uses the word evocation, it automatically means that they're being forceful, violent, or against an entity's will. I have never evoked an entity against its will. I have always evoked them, I've called them up, I have treated them with respect, and I have gotten to know them, and I have sought out a friendship with them and an ally with them. I've always treated them with respect. Of course, I've always demanded the exact same respect be treated back to me. I do not worship, so I'm not going to pray, I'm not going to worship, I'm not going to do all those things. So I will approach them with respect as my equal. Yeah, you heard me, as my equal. So if we instead remove the word evocation and invocation and say summon disrespectfully and summon respectfully, I'm always going to pick summon respectfully. Always, period, end of story. I think respect is a very, very big thing here. But the problem has gotten to, people have latched onto these modern terms in such a distinction that if anyone uses them just to mean summoning, which they do mean the same thing, they're pretty much interchangeable, or if you use the ceremonial topic where one means external or internal, without defining the words, people start getting mad because they think you're insulting or forcing or taking free will from these entities. And I can understand why someone would get upset if you're doing that, but also we need to try and understand we need to understand where individuals are coming from. We need to ask questions before we assume. Now, with that said, on this channel, just to make it clear, on this channel, when I use the word evocation, I'm using it to mean external communication. Okay? When I use the word invocation, I am using it to mean internal communication. And I am using the ceremonial terminologies here. I'm a bit old school like that. However, with that said, when I talk about summoning an entity, it is always with respect. Always. Anytime you are seeking out knowledge and information from an entity, even if it's an entity you don't get along with, if you're going to them, you should do so respectfully, and you should treat them with respect. Okay? Now, if they're not willing to treat you with respect in return, stop going to them. Go to another entity. Find another source of information. There's plenty of entities. There's not any entity out there that is the one and only entity that can help you with your problem. So I hope this helps clear up this evocation, invocation confusion a little. I know it has been crazy, and here we are, we're basically doing a video on definitions, but it was needed. And again, I want to reiterate, there's nothing wrong with demonolatry, and I do understand their references. I don't know why they necessarily chose evocation as disrespectful. The best I can figure is they are looking at the Solomonic text, as it is an invocation or evocation style text. And if that's the text you're looking at for your evocation, then yeah, it's disrespectful as hell, let's be honest. So yeah. So though I use the ceremonial magician's definitions, I also understand why demonolatry uses the definitions they do. I just hope all of us together will start asking questions and understanding how we're using these words before we jump to conclusions. But here on this channel, again, I reiterate, if I use evocation or invocation, doesn't matter. I always work with entities with respect, period. Okay? So no disrespect is ever given, and I just use these words as evocation, external communication, invocation, internal communication. Okay? Great. Now that we've got this cleared up, be sure to hit the like button, hit subscribe if you haven't already, turn on the notifications so you're notified anytime we have another great idea or release a new video or go live. We do live streams every Friday and Sunday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'd love to see you there. Also, drop us a comment. Let me know if you have any more questions on these two words, or if you've encountered different viewpoints of these. It's always great to share information so we can all learn more and grow. Again, terminology can get tricky, and the more we understand, the more we are on the same page, the better we can communicate. So I hope this helps that a little bit at least. And until next time, I'm Drake. This has been Working Dragon Mystic. Take care. Bye-bye.